Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unlocking the hidden secrets flowing right through your veins. Think about it. Every single time you get your blood drawn, that little red vial gets whisked away to some lab. But what actually happens next? Well, it goes straight into a clinical chemistry autoanalyzer. It's basically the ultimate medical detective tool. This incredible machine takes the complex biological fluid that is your blood and it translates it into hard, actionable data. It reads all those tiny biochemical clues left behind by your organs, your muscles, and your cells, and it turns them into a precise digital blueprint of your overall health. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover blood basics, blood proteins, decoding the lipid profile, enzymes as cellular damage detectives, measuring minerals and electrolytes, and finally, kidney function and filtering waste. All right, Section 1, Blood Basics. Let's dive right in.
So what happens to your blood after it leaves your arm? It sounds like a super simple question, right? But the answer actually dictates everything in clinical chemistry. When that blood leaves your arm, it's this messy mix of cells and a liquid base. And the thing is, the machine can't just drink whole blood. It absolutely needs that clear, nutrient-rich liquid hidden inside. And how we go about extracting that liquid, that changes everything.
So we hit this distinct fork in the road for sample preparation. We've got two main options here, serum and plasma. To get serum, we put the blood in just a plain tube, no additives at all, let it sit and clot for about 20 to 30 minutes, and then we spin it in a centrifuge. That clear liquid that separates out, that's your serum. Plasma, on the other hand, is collected in a tube that actually has an anticoagulant in it to stop the clotting process, so we can spin it immediately. No waiting around. Now, while both of these give us a liquid to test, clinical chemistry overwhelmingly prefers serum. Why? Because it's just a much cleaner sample. It's completely free of those clotting factors that can totally get in the way of our chemical analysis. And this is absolutely crucial. Using the wrong tube can literally ruin a patient's results. If you accidentally test plasma when you actually meant to test serum, the machine gets completely tricked. Because that plasma hasn't clotted, it still contains a clotting protein called fibrinogen, which artificially inflates the patient's total protein count. Or say you use a tube with the anticoagulant EDTA. Well, EDTA works by aggressively binding to calcium. So if you try to test that same sample for the patient's calcium levels, the machine is going to read artificially low, maybe even zero. Additives matter so much here. Even something like a sodium-based anticoagulant will completely falsify your sodium electrolyte tests. No way around it.
Moving right along to Section 2, blood proteins. Now, within your blood, proteins aren't just kind of floating lazily around. They are highly active responders. We have these things called acute phase proteins, and they act just like a biochemical alarm system. When your body suffers from an infection or tissue damage, your liver immediately, and I mean drastically, alters its protein production. Some proteins just absolutely skyrocket, while others totally plummet. By measuring these shifts, we can essentially spot a fire burning somewhere inside the body.
And this right here perfectly illustrates how we use these proteins as our detective clues. Let's say a patient's total protein count comes back high. As an investigator, you've got to ask yourself, why? Well, it could just be dehydration. If the patient has lost water, their proteins become highly concentrated, making that total count look falsely elevated. But what if we dig a little deeper into the specific types of proteins? If we see that globulins, which include your antibodies, are totally spiking, while a major protein called albumin is unusually low, well, we've found something else entirely. During inflammation, the liver actually stops making albumin so it can focus all its energy on fighting off the threat. We call albumin a negative acute phase protein. So high total protein might just mean you need to drink a glass of water, but high globulins combined with a low albumin, that points straight to active inflammation. Okay, Section 3, decoding the lipid profile. We test lipids largely for one huge reason: to evaluate the risk of a specific, very life-threatening condition called atherosclerosis. Because fats aren't water-soluble, they literally can't travel through the bloodstream on their own. They rely on these little protein vehicles to get around. And when the wrong vehicles drop off way too much fat, your arteries begin to harden and narrow, which severely restricts blood flow. Let's look at this transport cycle, because it really makes it so simple to understand good versus bad cholesterol. These transport vehicles are called lipoproteins. First up, LDL. Think of LDL as your delivery trucks. They take cholesterol from the liver and drop it off at your cells. But if you have too much of it, LDL just drops that cholesterol right into your artery walls, leading straight to that dangerous buildup we just talked about.
That's exactly why LDL is flagged as the bad cholesterol. Conversely, HDL acts like a fleet of garbage trucks. It drives through the bloodstream, picks up all that excess cholesterol from the cells and arteries, and returns it safely to the liver for disposal. And that's why HDL gets the title of the good cholesterol. Basically, you want a low number of delivery trucks and a whole lot of garbage trucks.
Shifting gears a bit, Section 4. Enzymes, cellular damage detectives.
Normally, enzymes are supposed to be locked safely inside your cells, doing all the heavy lifting of cellular metabolism. They really shouldn't be floating freely in your blood in high amounts. So when we do find them in the serum, it's a huge red flag. It means cells have actually been physically destroyed and have spilled their contents. These enzymes act kind of like an internal GPS, mapped out to specific organs. If we find the enzyme ALT, we immediately know the damage is in the liver. Finding CKMB points directly to damage in the heart muscle, and if we spot CKMM, that distress signal is coming from regular skeletal muscle. Okay, let's dive into a really specific scenario here because it highlights just how clever this analysis has to be. Take the enzyme AST, for example. AST is found in both the liver and the muscle. So if you just test for AST and the result is high, you honestly don't know which organ is crying out for help. But if we start combining clues, the suspect list narrows way down. We test for AST, and then we also run a test for CK, which is strictly a muscle enzyme. If AST is high and CK is high, boom, the damage is clearly in the muscles. But what if AST is high and that CK level is perfectly normal? Well, that entirely clears the muscles of any suspicion, meaning the damage has to be coming from the liver. It's like a logic puzzle. Next up, Section 5, measuring minerals and electrolytes. Now, you might be wondering, how does the analyzer machine actually see these invisible microscopic elements in the blood? Well, it relies on a core piece of technology called a spectrophotometer. When we add specific chemical reagents to the serum, it causes a distinct color change. The machine then shines very specific wavelengths of light straight through the sample. And based on exactly how much of that specific light gets absorbed, the analyzer can mathematically calculate the precise concentration of things like sodium, calcium, or iron. It is quite literally light magic translating raw chemistry into hard numbers. Finally, Section 6, kidney function, filtering waste. When we're assessing the kidneys, we're basically looking at how well they can filter waste products right out of the blood. And two main suspects usually pop up here, urea and creatinine. But as good medical detectives, we really have to weigh the reliability of our evidence. Urea is created in the liver as a byproduct of breaking down ammonia. The issue here is that urea levels are so easily swayed by outside factors. If you eat a massive steak dinner or, if your liver just isn't working perfectly, your urea levels will throw a complete temper tantrum entirely independent of what your kidneys are doing. Creatinine, however, comes from the breakdown of creatine in your muscles. It just drops right into the bloodstream at a constant, highly steady rate.
And that perfectly illustrates why creatinine is the absolute gold standard here. Because it's a steady byproduct of your own muscle tissue and it's completely unaffected by a high-protein diet or some fluctuating liver function, it serves as the perfect baseline. If that constant stream of creatinine starts building up in the blood, you know without a doubt that the kidney's filtration system is failing to clear it out. It is basically the most reliable witness we have to kidney health.
So we've seen how the blood tells the amazing story of our muscles, our heart, our kidneys, and our inflammation levels. But there's actually one story we haven't quite finished. We know the liver produces proteins and processes cholesterol, right? But it has another dark, incredibly critical job, breaking down dead, toxic red blood cells into a yellow pigment called bilirubin. So I'm going to leave you with this. What happens to the human body when that specific liver pipeline completely breaks down and that yellow waste starts backing up into the bloodstream? The answer reveals the striking, highly visible condition known as jaundice. But hey, that is a medical mystery for our next explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.